How do you help your brain wrap itself around this COVID-19 pandemic? Stick around for a few thoughts on this topic. Hi, you may have heard of the old saying, "This too shall pass." President Lincoln used it in some of his speeches back in the day to help people think beyond the stress of the Civil War. Think about it. In a nation with so many fewer people, we saw 600,000 Americans killed. So the only thing people would want at that time was this whole thing to be over with. They wanted life to just return to normal and be back to what it used to be. So the president knew that part of his job was to reassure the people in his speeches that this uncomfortable period where life became very uncertain at times and many people had lost family members, that this period would pass. Much of the problem for most people with this pandemic is that it challenges their life experience. What I mean by that is, if you were to witness something really terrible, like a bad auto accident, or something as awful as a homicide or murder, and you had never had any experience with those things in the past, your brain wouldn't know how to process it. Your brain wouldn't know what to do with it. This is where the term surreal comes from. There's no life experience to explain something, so your brain is left not knowing what to do or how to handle the information or how to process it. So this is really the times that we find ourselves in right now. We're in a surreal time. For anyone who's ever played a video game where there may be a theme of the world coming to an end or something taking over the world, then video game players have some experience with this, but it's just in a fantasy world. It's just in a world that's not real, that's virtual. And there are other people that have watched movies or read books about viral or bacterial pandemics that have wiped out life as we know it on Earth, and people are trying to adjust and survive. And again, those things are just fantasy. So when you go from a life that's normal day to day, if you live in the United States, where the economy has been especially good the last 2 or 3 years, in January and February, ironically, the unemployment rate had reached a historic low at 3.5% those months. People have been working. There's been real wage growth, and things have been primarily going along pretty good for a lot of people. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a virus that began in Wuhan, China, in a live animal market back sometime in mid-November, and then spread from animal to humans. It came out of nowhere, and it changed people's lives around the world. And so, because of the speed that this has happened, it's been surreal for most people. Their brains don't know what to do with it. I mean, there are few examples that I can think of that impact so many people. In my lifetime, back in the 60s when I was a kid, life was going along pretty normal, and then a very much loved president was assassinated. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, people are thinking, well, he's in a parade, or he's down there in Dallas before crowds of people that are coming out to want to wave to him. And all of a sudden, in a moment's notice, he's shot. And then the nation gets this terrible message on TV later that day that this much beloved president had died. Now, that was a shock to the nation because it happened so quickly. But while it affected millions of people emotionally, the people that were most affected, of course, were President Kennedy's direct family and friends. And so it didn't, other than the emotional and effect on people and the kind of feeling of uncertainty it gave, it didn't affect people so directly that they knew it was going to have an actual impact on their lives. And then there was 9/11, and again, of course, another thing that a lot of people lived through. And with 9/11, of course, the people that it impacted most directly were the families of those people in New York that were killed, and the people who were in the flight over Pennsylvania, and the people that were in the Pentagon, and their families most directly experienced the pain of that day. For millions of other Americans, again, it took a very normal day, actually what was a nice day in New York, and turned everything upside down, pulled the rug out from under people. Because not only were people just stunned to see what had happened in the loss of a life in just hours' time, but also there were people all over the country that were afraid what was going to happen next. Was something going to happen to the president? I happened to be in financial services at the time, and there was an immediate fear that the financial services industry would be the next target of the terrorist. And the building I was in was evacuated because there was a bomb threat. And it was scary. I mean, it was just scary. But in the end, the people that were most impacted in a very real way were the 3,000 people who lost their lives and their families and friends. Now we are confronted with something that is much more widespread in a real way. And here we were just going along fine with the economy humming along in the US. And there were news reports starting in late December and early January talking about this viral outbreak that was an epidemic in this province in China. But for most people, this was far away. For most people, they were going on their regular lives without much concern. But then it spread. And then we started seeing cases in the United States. But I think a lot of people were still in some level of denial that this is really going to grow and spread. Although there were epidemiologists and other infectious disease experts at the time that were saying that this was going to get bad. And then the news got worse and worse. More and more people got it. It started spreading exponentially. And the message was that it was a dangerous, very contagious virus, which it is. It is more contagious by at least 2 to 3 times or more than the seasonal flu. By my last calculation, about a little more than 4.5% of all the people worldwide who have been diagnosed with it have died. For people who are older, people my age or older especially, there's a great risk of ending up being hospitalized, or worse, ending up in the ICU, intensive care, in bad shape. And so there's reason for people to fear it. Now, I think the message that I have in this video is that this is a time to kind of put the brakes on and be rational and thoughtful at this time of uncertainty when life has become surreal. And when I say that, what I mean is that it's not a time to rely just on our own knowledge or our own perception or our own assumptions. We have to turn to people who are experts. We need to turn to the Centers for Disease Control. We need to look to interviews with some of the top infectious disease experts and epidemiologists and virologists and other people, public health officials, who understand this better. Now, granted, the coronavirus is what's regarded as a novel virus, which means it's new. It just really appeared in mid to late November. So we're talking a virus that is only months old. There are other versions of the coronavirus that are more common. In most cases, it cause much milder types of disease or illness. But scientists are hard at work, and medical researchers are hard at work trying to understand this particular strain of this virus so that they can put out accurate information. And those are the people that at this time we need to be listening to. And we need to not only listen to them, but we need to heed their suggestions. You know, it's often said with goal setting that you can set a goal, but it doesn't do you a bit of good until you actually put that goal into an action plan and actually start doing something towards it. when you set a goal, it's just a goal. There's nothing happening. And that's true with this as well. We need to listen to the experts, and we really need to do what they say. If they say to self-isolate or shelter in place, some terms that have become a more common part of the common vernacular in the US recently, then we need to do those things. I mean, what we are facing is more and more community spread and more infected people. And while you have 80% or 81 or 82% of people that will just have a mild to moderate illness with this virus, you have the other 20% who are going to get sick and have to be hospitalized. And when you're talking about 20% of all the potential people getting this virus in the United States, you're talking about way more people than our U.S. health system can possibly support. And that is why it's so important to listen to the experts and stay at home. If you're a person, let's say, that is single and you have food at home and you can just stay indoors, you literally have a 0% chance of contracting this virus. It is only when you go out into public and you are among other people, including people who are already infected, that you increase your risk of getting the virus. And what we know of coronavirus, and this is just what we know to date, and I imagine some of this is scientific, some is anecdotal evidence, is that if someone coughs or sneezes, or if someone who is infected is even talking, then the virus is contained in small droplets in the air that remain suspended. And apparently those droplets can remain in the air suspended as much as 2 or 3 hours. So if you go out to a grocery store or a big box store or something, and you think, okay, I'm practicing social distance and I'm not touching anything, I'm fine. Well, guess what? If 2 hours before a person was standing in a checkout line and they coughed and they were infected, and then you step into that airspace, guess what's going to happen? So the best thing to do is to isolate yourself as much as possible. Try to rely on deliveries, or even what I'm going to be doing shortly is pick up a grocery order and have the person at the grocery store put it in your trunk. And then when you remove it from your trunk, many experts have said to wear gloves and to put it somewhere. I heard one doctor say leave it outside. Of course, that wouldn't include perishable stuff. But in any case, try to desanitize or disinfect the outside of the packaging. And whenever you can, if there's inner packaging, remove that inner packaging and put that away and discard the outer packaging that might have been touched. Now, one thing that you should know is that viruses like the cold, and they can survive being frozen. They don't so much like heat, but they can survive in the cold. So if you have done what I've already done, and you have a frozen meal that was touched by somebody that may have been infected when they were putting it away at the grocery store, and then you take it out and put it in your freezer, guess what? You could be putting coronavirus in your freezer where it can last for a long time. So one of the things you can do by listening to experts is to not only stay out of public, but disinfect anything that you bring into your house. And if you have family members who have been out amongst other people, even if you haven't, it's good, at least for the time being, to practice social distance even within the home. These are just measures in extraordinary times, which we just have to follow these rules. When you do so, then you can put things into perspective, and you know you're much less likely to get sick. And this is especially true, again, for people that are my age and older. But you have to remember, if you're younger and you become infected, you could be infected for a couple of weeks without necessarily showing symptoms, or just showing mild symptoms that you don't think are coronavirus. And then you could be infectious to someone older who is part of the at-risk portion of the population, or someone that has a pre-existing medical condition. So every precaution needs to be taken, but if you take every precaution, you should be able to relax to some extent, and not let fear grip you too much. Now, on the economic front, Congress has, at least the Senate, has just passed a $2 trillion package. I believe it's called the CARE package. But it is meant to try to help companies so they can keep people on payroll without having to put people on the unemployment rolls. And it's also designed to kind of help people that have been put on the unemployment rolls because their jobs are in industries that have been really affected by this, because if you're talking about bars or restaurants or entertainment complexes and other things, you're talking about businesses that rely on people coming together in groups and socializing, and to try to limit community spread as much as possible. Those kind of businesses have had to be shuttered temporarily, which means that a lot of people have had to lose their jobs, or to be laid off or suspended for a time. And this again is probably lending to this surreal atmosphere that someone might have been making a good, comfortable living a week before, and all of a sudden they're concerned about a virus and about putting food on the table. So hopefully the Congress will pass and the President will sign this new law, which would be the biggest bill of its kind in U.S. history, to try to help people out economically and get us through this economically, because it's taking a double toll, not just people's health, but on the economy. So you should know that there are people in Washington that are trying to do something about this, as well as at the state level in pretty much every state. So to kind of wrap this up and put a bow on it, what I would say is that if you're feeling like you are living in surreal times, it's completely understandable. We are in a time like we have not been before, and it causes people to feel uneasy, to feel uncomfortable. Know that obviously you're not alone, that there are millions of other people feeling the same way. And as the old saying goes, the derivative is even this will pass, or this too shall pass. And for the same reason that President Lincoln said it back in the 1860s, it's still true now, today. We will get through this. If enough people will listen and stay in their homes and cause the virus not to be able to spread, then the healthcare system will be able to keep on top of it. We won't run out of ventilators then, and we can get through this. In the state I live in, the state's top public health expert has said that she expects this to be going through late April, with hospital admissions peaking in early May. And this video is being made on the 25th of March, so we still have a ways to go, and we need to keep listening to the people who are experts in this area and heed their advice. So thanks for watching this video. If you subscribe to this channel, I normally talk about how you can grow wealth and increase your wealth, which is certainly a subject that is always timely, and during this period, as we're dealing with this virus, I will probably do more videos on this topic, just to put things in perspective. Thanks for watching. Please like this video, and please stay healthy, stay rational, and know that we will come through this.